MANA is being sold as the next big setup, but the hard part is separating live facts from a future story. The headline target is loud, but the real work is testing what facts support it right now. Decentraland MANA Price is the search phrase that fits this story because the MANA debate is really about whether Decentraland can turn long-term metaverse relevance into enough adoption to make a $1 token price plausible later in the decade. That matters for traders chasing upside, but it matters even more for anyone trying to separate an investable setup from a story built mostly on projection. The real problem is that a projected upside number can travel faster than the facts needed to support it. Start with the mechanism. That path depends less on a chart target and more on user activity, land and marketplace demand, development pace, Ethereum costs, and competition from other virtual worlds. In plain English, the story is balancing a future target against what is actually live today, because a forecast only matters if the mechanism behind it can be measured. That is why the difference between a chart target and an adoption signal matters. One is a forecast. The other is evidence arriving in real time. That is why a move like this can look exciting on the surface and still carry far more risk once you ask who is actually providing the liquidity, the capital, the legal cover, or the operational support. The context matters too. Decentraland's 2021 peak at $5.85, its role as an early decentralized virtual world, and projected ranges that only reach $1 in the more optimistic later year cases. That backdrop is important because speculative markets often borrow credibility from a bigger theme before they have earned it themselves. That is exactly why some targets travel farther on social media than they do in the market itself. For people searching Decentraland MANA Price, that bigger backdrop is useful because it explains why this story landed now instead of last month. But context is not the same thing as proof. Here is the split between what is firm and what still needs more evidence. The MANA debate is really about whether Decentraland can turn long-term metaverse relevance into enough adoption to make a $1 token price plausible later in the decade. No model can prove that user growth, VR adoption, and platform stickiness will arrive fast enough to support the bullish scenarios. That is the line between a narrative that can mature and a narrative that simply burns hot for a few sessions. Viewers can easily mistake a live headline, a chart move, or a product announcement for a complete answer when it may only be the first visible piece. So who feels this first? That matters for traders chasing upside, but it matters even more for anyone trying to separate an investable setup from a story built mostly on projection. In practical terms, the market is now being asked to price not only the headline event, but also the follow-through. Execution risk, adoption risk, liquidity quality, legal clarity, or recovery credibility, depending on how the next few sessions unfold. If the follow-through is weak, the market usually starts to treat the forecast as marketing instead of analysis. That is where a speculative setup either graduates into a real market story or gets exposed as a temporary attention trade. The next proof point is not the loudest claim. It is this: watch active usage, developer updates, and whether Decentraland shows real retention rather than just nostalgia for the last metaverse cycle. For this video, the most useful close is a concrete one. Watch active usage, developer updates, and whether Decentraland shows real retention rather than just nostalgia for the last metaverse cycle. If that signal appears, the story gets stronger. If it does not, the current read can fade quickly. The next clean read on Decentraland MANA Price is not a louder slogan. It is whether the next measurable step confirms the same pressure, demand, or trust signal that made this headline matter in the first place.